This warrant covers 59 bills, mostly things like PhD and conformity, Alder and Associates, sewer work and things like that. So, is there other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. And second is we have a water warrant in the amount of $22,573.25, and I will move that amount. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Is there discussion? Okay, all in favor? All right. Thank you. Opposed? All right. Thank you so much. And if no one has any other business, we will, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to work session. All in favor? Thank you. Okay. Now we will open work session. And the first thing on our work session list is Dan. I'm going to say your name wrong. Hayaseki.
Hayaseki.
And thank you for being here. So we wanted to talk to you. So as you know, we have a resident who had tested their well and had some pieces in their well. And one of the town wells is also on their property, and they wanted to look into, I guess, a test from the raw, I'll say raw water from that well, that's not been treated. And the select board wanted to get your thoughts on that.
It certainly could be done if the town wants to have the raw water tested at Wadsworth Cove 350. That's your option. We have tested the finished water or treated water, and what we mean by that is after all treatment in the facility at Wadsworth Cove, there's a particulate matter filter that the raw water first passes through. There's then 2 tanks filled with media that is to remove arsenic. After the 2 tanks, we inject chlorine for disinfection and then a phosphate product to help with corrosion control, and then it flows out into the system. The state of Maine has required us to test that back before the end of 2022, and I believe that test was done in 2021. Let me double check that first test. October of 2021. We then tested the treated water again at the town's request in December of 2024. Each test, no PFAS compounds were detected. We followed the method that both the State of Maine Drinking Water Program and EPA has approved for testing PFAS. And there were 18 compounds in each sample that were analyzed, and all 18 both times were below the detection limit of 2 parts per trillion. We're going to be taking another sample in the next month or so, again at Wadsworth Cove, as well as at Spring Street and the British Canal well. Last year there was a federal rule enacted, the PFAS rule, that requires all public water systems to take 2 paired samples for PFAS 5 to 7 months apart. So we thought we could piggyback both the town sampling that you wanted to do last year, and then also kind of take one more sample in 2025 and kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, where we're doing the town sampling for updated information on PFAS, if any is present, as well as meet the pre-screening requirement for the federal EPA PFAS rule.
So Dan, it's my understanding that the resident is concerned about we'll say untreated water, because there are other residents on that who have private wells who don't use public water. And it's a concern that other wells might have PFAS contamination. And so if I'm just wondering, would it be possible for the resident to do a test and for us to do a test as well of the untreated water at the same time? And would the cost on that be prohibitive?
It's up to the town. If the town requests us to do testing the raw water of Wadsworth Cove well, we'll absolutely do that. The cost for a sample, one PFAS sample to analyze the 18 compounds using the EPA approved method, which is what we've used in Castine as well as at the other 9 public water systems that we operate, it's about $500 a sample.
Thank you.
Yeah, I guess my question is, since there was PFAS that was detected in one of the board samples when they were testing the Battle Avenue site. If there is PFAS found in one of the wells, what would be the appropriate remedy and very small levels, like going to a situation where we tested and the raw water does show that there's signs of PFAS, what would be the protocol?
I think it would depend on the specific situation. If for compliance purposes to meet state of Maine drinking water program and EPA, they really care about the water quality going out to the customer for almost every situation. And in the case of PFAS, that would be the case. There's some potential that the existing treatment at Wadsworth Cove might have the ability to remove some PFAS. And in the case of, say, Battle Avenue, the filters, there's also a possibility that a small amount of PFAS could also be removed. So if it were detected in the raw water, and I should point out that back in 2021, our initial sampling of PFAS at Battle Ave was in the raw water, and just over the detection limit, there was PFAS detected at 2.10 parts per trillion. The state of Maine's current standard is 20 parts per trillion for 6 specific PFAS compounds, and that compound was one of those 6. That was the raw water, so that's not what the customers saw. When we tested again in October of 2021, no PFAS was detected. So there's the potential that Battle Ave might remove just a small amount. Wadsworth Cove, that specific type of treatment for arsenic removal, I'm not sure how much it could remove. It is also anion exchange, but it's really geared towards removing arsenic and not PFAS. The manufacturer of that product, last week I checked with the representative, and they did not say that media that Castine's using would necessarily be used for that. That manufacturer has other types of media that is specific for PFAS removal. The representative checked with the engineering department, and we have not heard back yet. So kind of to pivot back to your question, it would depend on which source it was, the levels that were present, but generically, if PFAS is detected in a well, then the remedy, if you can't get rid of that well, can't abandon that supply and go to one that doesn't have PFAS in the raw water, then it would be to put in treatment.
Dan, I also want to say that this conversation does not mean that anybody thinks that you guys are not doing the most outstanding job. So please understand that, because we know that you do a wonderful job and you keep us all safe, and we appreciate that.
Thank you. And I think that's our feeling. It is your water system, the community of Castine's, and we do our best to operate it. And if you have desires to do additional testing or other things, we're certainly available and eager to do that.
Thank you so much. Okay, Derek, did you have any?
No, I'm good.
All right. So it seems to me, I don't know, that it would not be totally out of line for us to do a side-by-side test.
No, I mean, I have no objection, I think we should move towards data.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
if there's a request, go do it,
Yeah.
and if we can choose to have, on the town side, do their own testing along with the resident, and then see what happens, but I don't think we should be.
I don't think we should hesitate.
No, and then we see what happens
We'll just see what the
and
facts.
see what the data is, and then what the next steps should be.
Good.
So,
thank you.
in consultation with
Yeah.
Oliver and Associates.
So then in order to do that, we would have to vote on it at
The
the
next
next
meeting.
meeting.
Okay.
So we will put it on the agenda. Thank you so much.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, are you making a decision to allow the tennies to use their company to test the untreated water at the 351?
Next Monday, that's what we're gonna vote, to have the tennies test the water, and then we'll do a test at the exact same time in concert.
Okay, and one more thing is that we got this $15,000 to do additional PFAS testing. I think it would be interesting to test the raw water at the Battle Avenue Pond. Again, it hadn't been tested since 2021, to see if there's been an increase or a decrease in the PFAS at the raw level at the pond.
Well, the $15,000 is for a very specific
Reason.
test at, I believe, Dan, that's for a very specific test at the Battle Avenue site.
No, they're not
where we
doing it.
stuck-
That's
ground, oh, not,
EV
sorry.
McGuire was doing that.
That's, so that was the groundwater test. So the Battle Avenue ponds,
I mean, if they had 2.1 at the Battle Avenue Pond in 2021, and we're trying to figure out what's happening, I think it would be very instructive to take another raw pond sample and compare that to what it was.
and you know what, I don't disagree, Josh, that it would be instructive. I think what I would really like to see is I would really like to see the utility board come to us with that recommendation. So I don't know if you can talk to your board and get them to buy into this, but I think it would be really nice to hear this as a recommendation from the utility board.
And also, I feel at this point, you've asked us to do this testing, we're agreeing to do this testing, we're gonna vote it out next week. And let's just deal with this one piece at a time.
But for the sake of data, I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah.
I just think.
We have a couple other private wells within close proximity to the golf course that are in the works of getting tested, so there will be more data coming out soon.
That's great, and that's what we need. Okay, moving on, so we received, oh, I'm sorry, Dan?
No, you can go.
Oh, Dan, you can go, you don't have to stay.
Thank you, Dan.
You will be.
Thank you. Will Derek give us additional instruction, or Karen perhaps, on maybe,
Yes.
Could have- do you still have to vote on this, or is that a decision? Because if it's a go, I want to order the kit immediately.
We will vote on the 16th, next
Okay.
Monday, and then Derek or Karen or somebody will be reaching back out to you. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
I'll put a hold on order in the kit and wait to hear back.
All right, thank you.
Yep, if you have additional questions, just let us know.
Okay, have a good day.
You too, thank you.
All right, so we received a note from Kathy Muir. And Kathy is very concerned about pet waste in Castine. Do you need to see this?
No,
Okay, she's very concerned about pet waste in Castine, that over the last few years it has grown. We've seen more pet waste. So Kathy did some great research for us, and she looked up how much 10-gallon steel trash cans and posts are, and different from different pet waste groups. And just asked that the select board consider doing some of this, and I'm not sure where all we might put them,
I
so.
mean, it's kind of hard, I mean, I agree with it in principle,
Mhm.
but like, people who walk their dogs walk the whole loop.
right.
So it would mean having to put some of them on private property, you know, like, if you were gonna try to put them equidistant around the town. I just think, I think it's a good idea, I just think it'll take some work and practice.
You know, I think, Derek, if you would be open to it, I think it would be a conversation for you and Joe to have.
Well, we did, apparently we used to have some of these down there at one time,
Oh, really?
so.
We have food
Yeah.
bags
Where do we have food then?
here.
Here, all right. So would Joe and Corey be open to picking that up on the Monday morning trash run? Or would they be?
Well, I don't know, it depends how quickly they fill up, that's the problem, I don't know, how do we deal with regular trash in various places, that's gonna be the key.
Okay.
And whether they really get overfilled or not, that's gonna be a learning thing if you decide to do that,
Right,
so.
we would have to, I guess, experiment with it
Right.
and see how it went and what would we have to do? And would we have to pick it up maybe twice a week or once a week? And would they be open to doing that? Do they have time? I think we could put them at maybe Fort Madison, maybe one on Court Street, maybe one on Water Street. And that way, if somebody did the circuit, you wouldn't have to carry it the whole time, you could carry it part of the time. I have noticed as well, I mean,
Yeah.
that sometimes people bag it and then they leave it on the side of the road.
We've had it on the Main Street property, just left.
Yeah,
on
that's,
benches outside the
that's
bookstore.
not attractive either, so I think perhaps if we offered people a place.
How expensive are these things?
Not much.
I'm listening to you,
Yeah.
and as an educator, I'm sitting back going, why is the town taking responsibility because the adults in this community don't take their responsibility?
Well, I'm wondering if it's just the adult, and that's a good point, that's a very good point.
Well, it's way, well, it's, we'll be discussing the sidewalk situation and snow plowing,
Yeah.
same thing. Why are we taking on responsibility for a handful of individuals in this community to go shovel their driveway or shovel their walkways, right? The same thing. So there's
This is a whole
two
nother,
examples
this is
there,
another
all right?
one. Okay, and that's very fair, Tom. They cost it would cost between $700 and $1,400 for 4.
Okay, so it's not expensive.
So,
I think though, in both
Yeah.
situations that you raised, Tom, I think there's the question of enforcement.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, because there's been letters to the Castine Patriot, people have taken photos of the, waste bags left on sidewalk corners, on benches, and it seems to not resonate with people, particularly those who own those pets and are the ones leaving them. And I find it hard to believe after seeing it so many times that they're just forgetting,
And we
that's
have
right. So I'm just kind of curious, like, if we don't offer maybe some other kind of solution,
Yeah.
what other options might, we would be open to hearing any options, but how should we?
right,
And we have a blurb on the
Address it.
website even too, and
Right.
several spots on
Yeah.
the website about
Right,
pick up your dog's
Yeah.
poop.
right.
Sarah?
I'm not for or against, I just wanted to point out in terms of maintaining them, if they go in, the pretty constant need actually to empty them, otherwise you should expect significant odor related to any receptacle that is used by, and we have dogs, so.
That's a good point.
But the bags will break.
Yeah.
And so you have to be ready that that's what's in the container and like cleaning it all the time and just kind of being ready for
Thank you, yeah.
after installation's the easy part, sort of like all that
Yeah.
after. I'm sure we've all lived in cities or been in places, so.
And Tom, to your point, I did live in an apartment complex one time where when you moved in, your dog had to be DNA tested. And every time they found something on the ground, they DNA tested it, and if it was your dog, you paid for all the testing plus a fine. Now, I don't think the people testing would love that, but there are other ways to do it, yes, you're right.
There's no question, it's just like we're not having people take responsibility.
But Tom, I agree with Amy, the question becomes enforcement.
Enforcement, no,
Like, I mean, it's like, it's like, okay, you find a bag on the side of the road, I mean, do we wanna spend the time to track this, you know, figure it out, track? You know, cameras on the streets, I mean, it's,
So Derek, do you think it's, I mean, is it worth a conversation, again, another conversation with Joe, or no?
Yeah, well, it's up to you really, I'm kind of with Tom to a degree,
Yeah,
it's those few that aren't doing it, but also it's up to you to decide whether you, if you can't. Bend those people into compliance, I mean,
I mean.
I've taken the
if I-
dog for a walk, I know that I'm gonna have a bag that I return
Yeah.
home and throw in my own trash
I
when I
mean-
get home. I don't leave it there, I did see one that wasn't even in a bag down at the town dock. And down there, I don't know if by putting that there, if you encourage people to use it, there's really not any grassy areas to go, so.
Yeah.
Where do you make them go down there? That's the problem with down the town dock.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that could be somebody to get off a boat, or it could be just somebody walking, you don't know. But ideally, they should be finding the proper exercise area, you know, and then picking up after themselves.
I mean, I just know for ourselves when we walk our dogs, like we know where the town trash. So like, we grab the bag and we know, okay, we know we're gonna drop
Right,
it
and then you
either
can
here or
find
there.
it, right.
I mean, maybe an alternative solution would be if we had a. You know, if you had a town trash can at the other end of town, of, you know, like down past your house, then people in the week, you know, people who have short-term rentals are gonna fill it up with their.
That's the problem,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
is it's not going to just be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think we should just keep thinking, that, you
Okay,
know.
we'll,
thinking about it.
we'll keep thinking about it, we'll talk, if you could talk to.
I'll talk,
see
yeah.
what they think.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we had a request from the library, they're going to be doing some I'm thinking things. They're gonna be doing some strategic planning. And they have invited a member of the select board to be on their strategic planning team. So, you know, you're doing housing,
Yeah, and the housing,
Amy's doing early childhood, so I guess that means me.
yeah,
So if it's okay, I would be happy to sit
Yeah,
on
thank
the
you.
library's strategic planning.
thank you, Roberta.
And is
Thank
that okay
you,
with
that
you?
sounds
All right,
good.
wonderful. Everybody else has something to do.
Cause you have nothing to do.
I don't. I sit at my house and do this. Okay, committee protocol. That's just on here because I noticed that we had a little bit of a confusion last week, and I feel like that was select board's fault because we didn't give the housing committee.
I would say it's my fault.
Well, no, I'm the whole select board, we didn't write something up for the housing committee to remind them that they needed to have officers and they need to have a secretary for minutes to get them to sue and all of that. So I just, that was kind of a note to self, to me,
Yeah.
to remind me that we need to have something. We do for most other committees have a, like an ordinance or something to follow, but we probably need to write something up that
Well,
is to help
For all basic
ad
needs.
hoc
Yeah,
committees
okay.
to help.
Okay.
Okay, so the early childhood working group, so we did have a suggestion that if we do recreate an early childhood need, that instead of calling it a committee, we call it a working group. What do you think of that? That's fine. And, we have the original mandate that we gave them, or ideas that we gave them. And I guess I would ask that if everybody could look at it again, send me any changes.
And then on Monday, we
And then
can,
on Monday, we will,
Okay.
yeah, we will decide, but send changes or improvements or clarifications so that we have a document that will be really easy for
Yeah.
the agenda. Does that
Yeah.
work for you, Derek?
Yep.
Okay. All right. School Street, that's Derek.
Yeah, so the school's going to be doing some drainage work at the top of School Street, and I know Sean had mentioned the sidewalk down there that's all, up there that's all broken up. And of course, the water sits there, I call it Castine's largest pothole up there in front of one of the homes that basically, it's right at the edge of the fence at the top before you get to one of the driveways of the school there, that goes up behind the building. And see where the pavement's gone or whatever. Apparently, people don't really use that sidewalk, so replacing it may be a waste of money. And of course, a lot of times the cars are parked on it. I think actually, originally I wasn't even talking about curving it, but you have some perennial landscaping up near the top in front of the fences. So putting some granite curving along that section there, and then actually, well, removing out the sidewalk, building that up, and then super elevating that road from the new curb line all the way to the center, and making sure the water drains across that way, it doesn't just sit where it is now. We could actually do a little white stripe there to leave like a foot and a half of the pavement open as a walking zone for passengers getting out of cars, if somebody's trying to slide through there. That's the whole idea, to remove the sidewalk and actually super elevate it roughly so that the water sheets in the middle and then sheets over to the other side of the road of the common. And then, of course, down closer to the corner, there is a catch basin that the water sneaks by. Also, it fills up with gravel because basically the road, when it does come across the road, is collecting the fines, the dirt, and going right into that pipe. Or right into that catch basin. So I think what I'd prefer to do would be to actually pave that shoulder and create a little swale that would, any of the water that comes across would actually go into the catch basin where we could guide it into that spot. To fix the concern of the sidewalk being broken up, of cars parking on it. It would also improve the water drainage in that area. And of course, we may have to fix a little bit of the brick walkway as part of it. But I'm just bringing it to the board for consideration and then discuss it some more at the next meeting. I think I already gave you a little synopsis of it anyways, when I notified the two property owners that would be affected. Not heard from them yet, about this, but so I'm just bouncing off you to get your thoughts on, whether or not you think that's something.
So do you have an engineering firm?
I'm not planning on engineering it. I think we just use the same, we use Greg Bodney who's doing it. We know what we need to do. He can shoot the grades pretty easily and put in the curbing
Okay.
and remove out the old sidewalk and get it so that the water has the right pitch.
Any sense of what it will cost?
I don't yet.
Okay.
I will hopefully next week. I just met with him last week and went up there and looked at it. I do know that Sean and I had discussions last July before I officially started, and this is one of the things that we talked about doing when he and I met too, as a possibility. I mean, it's great to put a sidewalk back there, but for the money for it, it's not worth it if nobody's going to really use it. And if cars are parking on it, that's probably why it's broken up. In fact, also the wet, I think, the reason it's broken up is because it's a little soft underneath there for a base in the first place. The other thought is, don't even remove the sidewalks, just go over it with gravel and then pave over that, but I'm thinking, might as well remove them out while we can. So,
Okay, but you'll let us know. next
yeah, I should have an idea what it will cost by next meeting. I just want to get an idea of your thoughts before.
I mean, it sounds like it's, a solution or a potential solution. If Greg thinks it can work out and he can do that, then that may, and if the neighbors don't have any objection or
Right.
if they're losing anything on their part of the property,
Right.
then it may be something.
Shouldn't really lose it right now. They have a broken up sidewalk there. In this case, would put the curbing up right up against that landscaping that's there.
But you're protecting their
Right.
landscaping.
So if somebody's not gonna drive up onto their landscaping, that would be the thing that stops it. Otherwise, I would think, all right, let's just go right to the grass line with the pavement. Side of the curbing might be the best thing in case somebody does travel a little too far over there, as well as plowing or anything else.
Right, okay.
So gives them a good guide on that.
Alright.
Alright,
Great, thank you.
yeah,
The next thing on the agenda is to consider a 4-day town office work week. Some.
I actually have a couple of thoughts on it. So, in my tenure here, I see how often Sue and Karen come in early, stay late. And, you know, things come up all the time and, you know, they, you know, courageously and energetically always deal with it. And I just think that, you know, they're putting in way more time than we expect of them. And I think having a 4-day week would help that. And I, as long as it can get the work done, I don't see any reason why not to do it.
Is the idea to do like 4 10-hour days, so it's still 40 hours, or is there like a chance like that?
Yes.
Yeah,
So 4 10s and take off Friday or Monday or return on Friday.
Friday makes the
Friday
best
makes
sense
the
because
best
we
sense.
have Monday select board meetings.
So Friday.
I know many other towns have done this.
I think several other towns have done it.
There's many in the state of Maine now that have switched to 4-day work weeks.
No, I guess for good reason.
And it's one of those things where, you know what, it might not work for Castine, but we feel like we should at least give it a try.
There's no-
We can
no
always
reason
go
not
back
try.
to
That's right.
the
So,
regular
so let me ask
structure.
this, would I mean, I tend to think it can work, because it works in so many other towns. But if it didn't work, could it be something that on the Friday, assuming that just Natalie was here and there was limited services or something
And
like
that's
that?
another option that we have discussed as well, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's a good idea.
I do too. I think it's fine. Derek, did you have a comment?
I came from someplace that did 4-hour work weeks, so, and I've been working in one that was a 4.5 day, and way back I did one that was 4.25 hour day, and a lot of times I'd use actually the Friday anyways as a catch-up day in some cases whenever I was working there too. I will say the hours were flexible, so you could do, you know, open up earlier and a little later in the day to make up those 10-hour days. If it's 4 10s, and if there's somebody in the office that doesn't wanna do that, as long as we're properly staffed, they could easily still do that Friday as a work day. You know, depending on how it is. Sue and I have talked about that too. So if somebody said, all right, I'm still gonna work this to this, then they can fill up the rest of those hours, 4 hours on Friday or whatever it ends up being.
Are you still doing the motor vehicle work for Penobscot or Orland or with? Penobscot. I mean, one of the issues to consider would be that, you know, just to lower the workload. I mean, I'm still in favor of the 4-day week, but also to make it a little bit more manageable if we said that's not available to those residents. It takes pressure off of the office here.
Well, we talked about that.
We never followed up on it.
No, you weren't here yet, Amy, so so Penobscot doesn't do that.
Penobscot does
They
do
do.
motor vehicles, but they're limited services. They can only renew. And then the other problem is that their office hours are not like our office hours or even any of the other surrounding towns. The other thing with Penobscot is that they have gone through so many transitions over there that has caused a problem where Penobscot people will go over and do something and they're supposed to be open and they're not open. So there's been problems over there, and we really haven't had a problem over the years of doing it, but the last several years we have been so inundated with a lot of work with Penobscot registrations. The town of Orland and I forget the other one, and I heard through the grapevine that the other one did start it up again or something, but they stopped doing it. So because they didn't have other places to go to, it all fell on Castine.
including Orland.
Yes, Orland stopped doing Penobscot
No, Orland
transactions.
wasn't doing Penobscot's, so Penobscot, instead of going to Orland or Castine, just went to
Yeah,
It's been crazy.
so we were struggling with a lot, and then it got to the point where I would have, and I'm not exaggerating, 3 or 4 Penobscot people in line waiting to get in there, and then I could see a Castine resident way back there who just was standing there waiting in line, and all they wanted was to buy trash stickers, and that's just not right. I mean, the services should be Castine residents first and foremost. So there's just been things that we've been noticing, and it's, you know, it's part of some of the wear and tear in the office going on.
So is there a question about whether to continue with the serving the Penobscot?
We've talked about it, yeah.
We talked about this, but now that we brought it up before the week, I'm thinking like part of the reason that some of the days might get so long is because we're doing work for other towns.
Yeah.
And so I personally think it would be a combination of both. We stop doing the motor vehicle work for Penobscot and we do the 4 day week.
Yeah.
Well, and then, you know, to follow up on what you're saying is that when we get such busy days and we're doing all this stuff for another town, I mean, there's other deadlines that we have to, like, I didn't even get my motor vehicle reports ready for you guys, so I'll be calling you in for signatures tomorrow. But anyway, you know, there's other things that we have to do, not just the foot traffic that comes in, and I'm not complaining, but just so everybody can understand the concept that there's other things in the office that have to get done. So sometimes I'm in till 5 or 6 o'clock because I have to get that other deadline thing done for elections or motor vehicles or whatever the case may be. And the other thing I'll point out too, in case, I think it's starting to get out there, we're getting more and more, but we also have online services. We have rapid renewal for car registrations. People can do it online. We have, boat registrations can be done online. And we also, now the state has implemented a new dog registration program. We are not signed up to do that quite yet. We're in the process, but by the time the new dog registration year really starts in October, we will have that set up with the state and online for people to register their dogs online as well. So there are those kind of services available as well.
That's great. Well, why don't I draft a letter to Penobscot? Because we've talked with Penobscot, Karen talked to Penobscot, and Gordon talked to Penobscot, Sean talked to me. Did you talk to Penobscot?
I did not,
Okay, but
just
Sean
you
did.
guys done it right.
Yeah.
And we've heard from people that, when we call up, that their intent is to do the training or whatever, but we never really hear an update from them about where they're at
We're
or
not gonna be a
what's going
priority
on.
for you here.
Right.
And we're going into the busy season where we're gonna start getting more of them coming through the door.
We don't wanna be a bad neighbor, but we've been a really good neighbor, so.
Never heard of it, we can just say, we're
It's
just
time.
we're just
It's
not in the
time for us.
position, we don't have the
Yeah,
staff.
we need our staff
Yeah.
to focus on this.
Yeah.
Because those people are going into Penobscot to pay their excise at least, right? They just haven't done
Some of those
the new reg,
transactions,
right?
right, some of those transactions, we have people that are so used to coming here for years that they don't even go to
Right,
Penobscot
yeah.
anymore, they come here.
Right,
And then we do have people that are getting into the office, paying their excise tax. And then coming here to get the plates, because we're a plate town. And then we have people that just come in here and do it, and that's another part of the accounting process. We collect excise tax for another town.
Yeah.
We have to document everything, we photocopy everything. We have to show that it's going through the proper channels, and that money is reaching Penobscot.
Okay. Well, we'll put it on the agenda for
Yeah.
the 16th
Yeah.
to vote.
Yeah.
To make that change. And then we'll work on a draft letter this week. Thank
Do
you.
you, I have one quick, do you have an idea of what hours would be proposed if it were, say, a 4-day
Oh, for 4 days.
work week? Has that been discussed or chatted about at all?
Sue and I have informally, but of like, if we're gonna do different ones, flex them out or standard or whatever, so.
Okay.
Probably Monday, you can have some ideas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anytime.
Thank you.
Let's put it on the agenda for Monday.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned Orland comes here too.
Not Orland, no, only Penobscot.
Penobscot used to go to
That's what I thought
Orland.
Oh, okay.
And then Orland stopped doing Penobscot's work.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the lighthouse lease. So the lighthouse, the town would give us permission to renew the lighthouse lease. And I wanted to talk about some potential changes to that lease, that I was thinking about. I'm thinking that going forward, maybe, because in my mind, that property is our only workforce housing property in town. And so, I think that to honor that, we maybe make it a 1-year lease. And whoever gets that lease, I mean, definitely, consider renewing the lease, but whoever gets that lease then has a year to find other suitable housing in the area.
So basically, it would be for transitional housing.
Yeah, kind of transitional housing to help, like, anybody who's coming into the Adams School or coming into the clinic or coming in to work at Witherly Library or in the town hall. I mean, we, if when we got our new town manager last year, if we had not hired someone who happened to have a house in Bucksport, we wouldn't have had housing for that person. So, I think we've been very lucky to have a wonderful tenant thus far. But I think maybe if we make some little changes to that, but I don't know what you guys think. So I'm just throwing.
Yeah, I'm open to that. I guess one of my thoughts is if we are going to offer the place for lease, I think we should have a process, how people apply, how the tenant will get selected. I wouldn't want it to seem arbitrary. I would want it to be like, I would want it to be that these are the procedures that we've set up. These are the procedures that we're gonna follow. And so that it's very clear, before we even offer the lease, the property up for lease, it's very clear what the standards are. And secondly, we want to ensure that it's a full-time resident.
Yeah, and I think, and it's only based on my recollection, but years ago, when I think we, started looking at the opportunity at the Keeper's House, that it was, I think the hope was that it would be used for someone who's working in town. As I recall, I think that was part of the discussion. So I personally don't have an interest in seeing it be an Airbnb or be rented out in short-term rentals. That's my personal belief.
No, but I just
I'd like to use it.
But I think we can clarify the record right now that this select board has never discussed turning the lighthouse into an Airbnb. I think for everybody here, we have never once. So that whole article, all the rumors going around, the letter we just got from somebody who's very angry that we're gonna turn it into an Airbnb, we have never once discussed it. So David, please. Wake up. Yeah, and on that note. On that note, I do think we should write a letter to the Bangor News.
She reached out, I called her back, she didn't
They
come
reached
either.
out to us today and said, the lady who wrote the article reached out and said that she wanted the meeting and that if she needed to make changes or something.
Okay,
that
great.
we could talk about.
Okay,
And the other thing is it was brought up at town meeting, that did the select board want to sell the property to some sort of a place that would rent it out as an Airbnb? And I'm just gonna go on record for myself saying, no, I don't want to do that either. I don't think that's a good idea either. So, but that's
That would
my
have,
opinion.
that would have to go to a town vote
I
anyway
know,
too.
but I wouldn't wanna do
no,
that.
I just think we want to be very careful about this information coming from this
But
board.
have we all heard people say somewhere, oh, well, you could do this or you could do that? Yes. And do we hear that about 7,000 things every single day? Yes. So you guys have no idea all the exciting things that could be happening. Never mind. But no, never have we discussed that. So that would be my thought. Does somebody else have time to work on writing up that sort of policy and procedure? Do you have time to work on
Yeah,
writing that up
yeah.
for us? And
I won't have it for Monday.
okay.
I need more time.
Okay,
Yeah, well, maybe I can get it right.
because the lease ends on the 30th, so we're.
Okay,
gonna have
okay,
to
so
decide.
I will try to get something. together
Okay,
for
that
you.
would be
Okay,
great, thank you so much. Yes,
I'm just curious how the rent is set. The rent in the Bangor Daily seemed not fair market value, so I'm curious about that.
The rent was set years ago, but
it was 7 years ago, I guess by the select board, did it seem low or high?
Low.
Low. Yeah, I think part of that is because it's workforce house, our idea is workforce housing. And I think that the select board at that time, and I might be speaking out of turn, but I think the select board at that time wanted it to be for someone who was working in Castine, who,
but that lease was set 13 years ago, right? The original.
Well, they originally, but not, it's only 3 years old, so
Yeah, it's
whatever
only
was
3
3
years
years
old.
ago is whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
but I think we would probably keep it. In my opinion, we would.
I got a comment. That's actually pretty current. That's 2 bedrooms, 1 bath,
Mhm.
600 a month per bedroom.
Mhm.
That's
Okay.
going right.
Okay,
That's going right?
Okay.
I thought it was higher.
Thank you.
but okay, thank you. Liz,
I think it's a great idea. I think you might wanna say that there's an option for a second year, just trying to,
yeah,
because it might be a personal situation and.
right, sure,
And
I
then
think we could work with.
The other thing is that I think it's gonna be a little bit more of a management issue for you guys, but otherwise, I
But,
think.
yeah, but if people, I guess we've had other people apply to get the lease this year. And, sometimes people apply that, are just moving to the area, or they might be retired, and if our point is to keep it as workforce housing, then I think we should have some policy in place as down that
Right,
to make sure that we're honoring that.
exactly, yeah.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is you want to use it to help out that, but also as a recruiting tool. So if we have a teacher or somebody that's applying, the barrier may be whether they take the job or not. That is, oh, I can't find an affordable place to live here or within a 30-minute commute or whatever. So you're going to offer it to them for a year.
Right.
And with a possibility to extend it, whatever the housing market may not have got any better. Of course, I would say, I'd wanna shield that person from everybody calling them up every week going, I saw a rental someplace, I mean, so they're secure in that for their year, but knowing that they should be looking at that, so if all of a sudden we have masses of rentals available, then those people would consider, or that would be a possibility and would come into play with a decision of the board to extend it or not.
Exactly.
But they should have that expectation, hey, you're gonna do this. The other thing is whether or not we go month to month a little bit while we figure that out and whatever.
We might
With
to do that.
with even the current tenant. so that they-
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think in fairness, that is what we should do, because it's a courtesy.
Yeah,
It's
I- yeah.
obviously gotta be,
I
if
think-
anything were to change,
Yeah,
I think, that has to.
yeah, my thoughts
Right.
were either if we change it, we either do a month to month thing, we'll with the current resident.
Yeah.
Or we offer the current resident a 1-year lease.
Right.
okay, yeah,
And saying, okay, you're gonna be our first person to do a 1-year.
right,
But,
yeah,
but then that's, you get the 1 year. So
yeah, all right.
That's kind of where it goes out. So thank you so much if you can get that.
You're-
Back to.
but I'm not gonna work on the lease itself, I'll just.
No,
do the-
just the protocol and procedure,
Okay,
the process, okay. What else did I have on here? So. Some of the things that came out of the speed calming, I'll just say, of the traffic calming, vote, which were funny, not funny, but there was a note, people wrote notes, they used
Were there
it
write-in
as an
signs?
well, there were write-in signs, but there was also an opportunity to write in problems. So apparently, we don't have speed signs on Waterworth Cove Road, maybe that's something we should look into.
Yeah,
And we received comments that the speed around the transfer station is too high. And that it's a really dangerous area. Anyway, anyway, I just thought that was interesting, and because I know all of you are dying to know how that traffic calming thing turned out. We have numbers. And we will still take votes this week if somebody wants to turn it in to Sue or Karen. But as of now, oh, what did I do with it? I have it. As of now, the number one traffic calming slogan was lobsters crawl, you should too. Number two.
Is this in no particular order of them, or? Are
This, I'm just telling you the top three votes.
Oh, top three.
Votes. Number one.
No particular order?
Lobsters crawl, you should too. Number two. Guys, seriously. No cops here, we use deer.
That's not a good one, but they will slow you down, I'll let you
And
know.
number three was slow it down, protect our town. So those were the top three. As of now, more votes could come in, so anyway. I know Gordon wanted to talk to us, but.
And Lauren wants to.
So Gordon wanted to talk to us about snow removal.
Well, I want to talk about two things, actually.
Okay.
With the articles, I was not able to come to town meeting because I was ill on Saturday, so I came today. Snow removal, let's talk about that first. I had, in my professional experience, quite a bit of dealing with snow removal on sidewalks. And the only thing I'm going to suggest is that be very careful of what you do with that, because as soon as you start removing snow, you assume the liability. And the liability is much more than you might think. If the sidewalks are being plowed and they're not perfectly free of ice and snow, and somebody falls, you're liable. So if there's a little bit of ice that was left and somebody falls on that, it's your liability.
Okay.
And I don't know if I have to say any more, but you do assume a very high degree of liability if you start removing snow from sidewalks.
There was one thing that I forgot to mention at the meeting, I think of things at 3 in the morning a lot, but, Derek and I have talked about, and this does not, I don't think this takes that away, but Derek and I have talked about having, buckets of salt or sand where if you're walking by and you see ice, if you wanna take, I don't think that takes away that liability.
It does not.
Now, but it is something that we've talked about having available, that if somebody sees that there's an icy card, we can at least try to
But-
address it.
And even if it's still snowing, if you have decided to plow the sidewalk, the fact that it's snowing makes no difference on the liability.
But if you don't plow, or, so if we continue the way we are.
Yeah.
And somebody's on a sidewalk and they fall down and break their leg.
Homeowners,
What?
homeowners.
Unless it happens here at Emerson.
But if the sidewalk is not plowed, there's no assumption of liability
Okay,
by anybody.
okay.
Okay, it's something we're gonna have to.
Yeah, and this is from my professional experience that I'm telling you this, so I'm just letting you know.
Thanks, Gordon.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to talk about was the, I gotta put my glasses on. Oh, traffic calming.
Okay.
Okay, back in 2006, I wrote a report for the town that included some of the things that you would have to do if you put in such thing as speed tables, speed bumps, and so forth. If they're not signed and the pavements aren't marked according to the manual on uniform traffic control devices, which is the state of Maine standard as well as the standard in almost every state in the union. And somebody goes over a speed bump or a speed table and has a collision. If they're not marked and signed properly, the town assumes all responsibility for that accident. And in the report that I wrote, Derek has a copy somewhere in his file. Is what the signing and pavement markings need to look like, and it's very extensive pavement marking. Wadsworth Cove Road is not signed marked that way, nor are there signs. And the town has got their neck stuck out on that road because of what's out there.
Okay,
So if,
thank you.
I'm just bringing it to your attention because I would hate to see the town assume liability that it didn't have to assume. And especially if someone gets in an accident or, you know, worse. The town doesn't want to assume that responsibility.
We'll start with Wadsworth Cove Road.
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah, no, there should be one of those, there's one or sign, I think, at each end where there's roughly says like, I forget what it says, speed bump ahead or something, but there ought to be one at each speed bump.
well, and the pavement should be marked. according to
Well,
the
they
manual.
are painted right now, they just painted.
Well, no, it's
them
not just the bump.
Yellow.
In advance of the bump,
Oh,
the
in
pavement's
advance,
supposed to
okay.
be marked also.
Yeah, all right, that's.
And I can, I've got
I
it
would
here.
love to
Yeah.
borrow that. Or get a copy made, if
Okay.
you don't mind, thank you,
Thank you, Gordon.
thank
Yeah.
you so much. Does anybody else have anything?
Well,
Yeah, I brought this up at the town meeting, but was told to come to this meeting.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
with respect to the Castine rental housing ordinance, their very end has the basic safety guidelines for housing. And, I really think it would be cleaner if, rather than have all of this text, we just said that people adhere to state, requirements. And if I could just give one example to illustrate that. I'm familiar with the smoke detector one, because I personally adhere to the state requirements for that when I rent my house out. But in what the text says here, they refer you to the main state fire marshal requirements. When you go to the main state fire marshal page, there's a warning at the top of the page that says, while we have taken care with the accuracy of the files below, they are not official state rules in the sense that they cannot be used before a court. And then when you go down to the thing that's referred to in the Castine ordinance, it is something from the NFPA #1 Uniform Fire Code. And then when you click on it, it's behind a paywall, so you can't even read it without paying for it. So the actual state law says that a landlord may install 10-year sealed tamper-resistant battery-powered smoke detectors if the unit is a single-family dwelling, which is what most of the rentals in Castine are. But what's written in here says that the smoke detector must be electric powered with battery backup, which is an old standard. That's not the new standard. So just, there was no date on the state page, but I did find something from the Maine Housing Authority that has new standards effective December 29th, 2024, which is really quite clear and even talks to the placement of fire detectors. So I only looked at that one thing because I have 7 fire detectors in my house and I didn't want to have to hardwire them all. But my guess is there's other things in here that don't align with state standards, so I think it would be best to have simple language. And then if the town wanted to take on every year coming up with a recommendation that aligns with state, that might be a good thing to do.
Okay, so instead of having that page, have something that just says follow state regulations, or should we give the website like the specific URLs? for
You
the
can
different
give
parts?
the links, but somebody has to make sure that they're up to
That they're
date,
up, yeah.
because the one to the fire marshal's page basically says this doesn't adhere to the law necessarily. It was kind of useless.
I also think that once we read this,
Yeah.
we should speak to the town attorney and get the recommendation. So, I mean, if we're gonna do it, let's make sure we do it right.
And somebody else spoke up at the meeting about this wording, taking away property rights, and you didn't elaborate on what those taking away property rights were, and I would love to know what that is.
So right, so those things there, I think they're put into the ordinance by reference, okay? And I don't believe the intent of this ordinance is to put locally in whatever the fire marshal NFPA 101 says about rental properties. The whole concept of this ordinance is to create a registry so that we don't have deadbeat landlords in town.
Yeah.
So that if there's a fire, if there's a carbon monoxide detector that keeps going off and the Red Cross ends up putting 4 students or 4 people in a hotel, okay? And we have somebody that bought this, some house and it has, let's say it's a capital investment company, because they're buying them everywhere, right? And the only address we have is whatever address is on the tax rolls. So while we have an emergency going on, where we have people that are basically homeless, we try to get a hold of them, we send them a letter by mail to that address. It goes to wherever, they finally get back to us in 3 days. We've now had an emergency situation going on for 3 days where nobody can contact anybody. And of course, they've done this in Bar Harbor, similar ordinances, they've done it in Orono and other college towns, because they had absentee landlords that weren't available to address issues that would come up with their properties. And that's what this property is trying to do for the fire department, for the town itself. So if we have an emergency situation, we have a contact that can take responsibility. So if somebody's off in Bermuda, part of their responsibility as a rental person is to have somebody locally around that can answer the phone and give some answers to what will be done to address an emergency situation. The size of the windows, number of fire extinguishers, all of that stuff ideally is all state code. We're not requiring anybody to have what isn't already required under the state law or NFPA 101 or any of those fire standards. So that is the idea behind this, is to get a local contact. And most of the other stuff is just by reference. I believe part of it's in there as a checklist is to help out people on their local things so that we can point out, hey, this
So
is.
Jared, what can we, do you have any idea what we can legally require? I mean, if somebody buys a house here in Castine and is renting it out by Airbnb, I mean, can we have fairly strict standards here in town and say, you know, if you're gonna do Airbnb, okay, it's gotta be registered, we have to have a contact information.
Yeah.
If they're if they live in Hawaii, can we say, you know, you're required to have a local, you know, we're gonna require you to have a local property manager who can fix things within 24 hours. I mean, I guess.
A designated
A designated person.
So I would say these things are going up in many places, Hampton Beach, Portsmouth, Bar Harbor. Bar Harbor has one on there.
What
And
was the
that's where your
charge per
violation is
So what is Bar-
under land use ordinance standards,
So what
just
is-
like
what-
it's appealable under our land use ordinance.
So what is Bar Harbor? Just give me a sense of a strict one.
Well, Bar Harbor has a short-term and long-term one, so basically they have this similar language in there to, so that they are able to contact somebody in an
Okay.
emergency. So, I haven't read the word for word on Bar Harbor, but they have a nice little
Okay.
synopsis type of, thing on there for short-term rentals
You know,
of, like what the rules are. Registration, all short-term rentals must be registered with the town on an annual basis. Prior to rental, previous registered properties must re-register. And then they have the application and emergency information form as part of that registration. Of course, here, you have all short-term rental properties must pass an inspection. Prior to the issuance of the registration card, properties must schedule for re-inspection every 3 years. And then they have a checklist. They do have the egress window requirements, fire extinguisher. But all of those things, when they talk about that, aren't local, it's what they have to have anyways.
kind of.
We're just saying as part of our registration, we're just double checking to make sure you have what you're required to have anyways to rent that property. We aren't taking away your rights, we're just noting what you're supposed to already be having for the safety of your tenants.
So-
For you to be a responsible
So somebody-
landlord is the idea behind
Somebody
it.
comes to town, they buy a building, they want to do Airbnb, they register it. Sean is the person who's gonna go in and make sure it's.
And a fire chief, most likely, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but that's the whole idea is so you would do that. but all of the requirements are already requirements of then whether we have registration or not. Our biggest thing is being able to contact the property owners, and that's how you get to it. It's great to have a registration, but you know, when the fire marshal rolls in after emergency situation or fire, would you rather know ahead of time that, you know, you had everything, or would you rather find out when they're finding you and some gets killed? And I was talking to Randy about this today, which I remember back in the eighties, but then there was, while I was still in school or right after school graduating, USM had a big fire in this big mansion that sat near USM. And there were 8 kids living in it, and 6 of them died in that place because of lack of egress and a bunch of other issues. So, and that's where they started getting into that, of, you know, just doing those inspections. But this came about from what the 2 people I've talked to about it is, so that we can actually contact somebody with responsibility for that if there's a issue that arises. In Orono, they use it a lot because they used to have Park Street, I remember, because I was in college, that was Party Central, and there are several little houses there that always have parties, and the cops would always come and bust them up. Ideally, they ended up getting those people's numbers so they could call the people and say, hey, wait, you know, you got a problem underage drinking on your property, you have liability, blah, 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 all that stuff.
Sorry, Scott?
I think part of the, back when this first started about registering these things, there was, you know, maybe 50% of this was for regulating what the landlords can do. The other 50% was to identify all the things, rules and regulations, whether they're redundant with local and state and all that, as a placard. And when we first started it, I did it in all my units, and it was to let the tenants know what their rights and expectations were. And so that every unit had that same list, but it wasn't to you know, restrict the landlord. It was to let the tenants know what their rights and expectations are, and if something's wrong with a smoke detector or a fire extinguisher or a window, they know they have a right to go get that fixed.
Yeah.
So I would be an advocate of leaving that the way it is, and don't tear it apart and make it smaller and avoid redundancy, because all those rules and regulations should be noted by the tenants, so they know what they should expect and what the laws are and what the landlords are supposed to do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Sue, did you?
Well, I think part of the confusion is, and quite honestly, I'm confused and I work here, is that like what you just described, Derek, is basically what was passed in 2018. So what was this ordinance that was brought forth this past weekend? And we had a 3-page ordinance on the books that was passed in 2018, and then this was a 6-page ordinance. So what is all that other stuff that was in the ordinance? Because what you just described is completely, in my understanding, what we've been operating with since 2018. It was a registry. So we have a binder in the office with all the forms of people who have rental properties. So we have a means to contact, whether it's them directly or if they have a property management overseeing it and so forth. And then had the safety part of it, like Scotty just explained. So I don't know what was all,
And
except for the.
that's what I wanna find out, is I know the fees went up a little bit. I
There
know
was
this
no fees.
mentioned
There
short.
was no fees in 2018. So that document you gave us today is not right. There was no fees. The only fee that was in is that we had a deadline date, and if somebody came in with their rental registry, whatever you wanna call it, registration form, after the deadline date, there was a $25 late fee. There's been no fees since this was implemented in 2018.
Well, I think that, I need to talk to Sean, do that.
Yeah, I think we wanna go over it a little more and fine tune whatever needs
And
to be
Lauren,
done
yes.
to give that input.
Your suggestion, definitely.
Yeah.
Scott?
Just so you know that, I don't remember the year, but you can look it up, but there was a year in the 50s, I think. Any building built before that, egress window sizes and not,
There's still
No
some,
concern.
yeah.
You can't make somebody take a short building and put in a big window.
I don't think so.
No, you
because-
can't, I know.
No, it doesn't make any
So you
sense.
don't make it sound like, cause all of these buildings you're talking about are old.
No, there are grandfathered provisions, as I understand it too, you're right.
That actually was brought up in the public hearing, that was
Yeah.
on, that was held.
So when you
for-
note that in your form, you
Yeah.
know, make sure you find the year, I can give it to you, I have it at home, but.
Thank you. David,
Something else I noticed in the 6-page version that you read on Saturday. The terms permit, license, all of these things are used somewhat interchangeably, but not entirely. So it says the town is licensing people to rent their houses. It says it's issuing a permit. So some of that is inconsistent.
yeah, I think what we need to do is we need to talk to Sean and we need to look at it and we need to talk with the attorney and look at it together.
Yeah.
And do that.
So it's like we could get this done next month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have anything? Okay. The final thing that I would like to ask Selectboard is, we need to have an executive session on office and manager. And, Laura is on vacation for the rest of this week. And I was wondering if we could do it about Tuesday.
We're gonna have to be remote next week.
Next week.
Yeah, I have a meeting on Tuesday. I'll be back here Wednesday, you know, at some point.
Okay.
So we could do it Thursday,
Um,
or even late Wednesday, or might be possible.
I wanna
Okay,
do it.
can we do it?
earlier.
Can we do it?
earlier.
Can we do an executive session that can be remote?
Yeah.
Yeah, then we do it. Then you want to do it, do it.
Should we do it on Tuesday or?
You do Tuesday.
On the 17th,
Yeah.
I actually have an appointment on that, but I actually could probably change that.
No.
No, it's easy to, so if we, cause I don't think we've done it. So yeah, are you thinking like 4 PM or something?
Like, yeah.
I mean, it's like, I have something in the 17th, let me see.
17,
Would that work for you, Daryl?
no, there's something going on the 17th,
So my meeting in the 17th is the board.
at least I have it in my calendar.
Okay. Okay.
Which is something to do with that grant, but it may have changed.
Are
That,
you going on Monday's meeting?
Yes.
So we have to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
What time do you get back on Wednesday?
I have to drive, so I get up early, if I left at 6, I'll be here, we do it at 4.
So we do 4 on Wednesday.
Yeah,
Yep.
Harbor Committee has a meeting then, just, not that that matters. That's at 4:30, but.
Oh, well, Dan, could you do a morning meeting if we did it, if you were via Zoom?
yeah.
And it doesn't have to be 7:30, like maybe like 8 or.
Okay.
You would
No,
have,
right, I'll let you all sleep
I'm.
if I'm driving, we'll just do it.
Okay, that'll be fine. Okay, let's, come on, 8 on Tuesday morning.
Yep.
Alright,
Yeah.
alright, 8 o'clock, Tuesday, the 17th, executive session.
Tuesday, okay. Yeah, Wednesday, for some reason, I don't know, just.
It is the 17th, right?
Yeah.
Alright, thank you very much. Okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
No.
Okay, ready now.
Here we go.
Okay. There's not, there's yours. Last thing?
Again, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. A lot of things that we've discussed, I think you and I have had this discussion before. We put things into committees in this community over the 35 years that I've been here. And the committees make decisions, bring it in front of the select board. And we settle it, or like they do in education, when you put something in a committee, you really don't want anything done. Right? But we've had a lot of different things, for example, the sidewalk committee. They worked on that for months. Affordable housing, We worked on that for almost a year, all right? And it just keeps coming back. And after a while, why are we doing these committees?
Yeah.
Because it just becomes constantly until, and this community has a tendency to do this. They keep bringing things up until they get what they want.
Well, there is that. But we do, I think part of the reason that we send things to committees is that there's only 3 of us. And we can't do all of it, and so it's so much better if a committee can come to us with recommendations. And that we can really, I mean, at least on my part, that's why I.
And also things change. I mean, what didn't work 3 or 4 years ago might work now. I mean, Tom could use it just as an example. So we have this workforce housing committee, and today Roberta sent us
Yeah.
this email about what North Haven, was it? North Haven,
Okay.
what North Haven is doing. And it was this very innovative approach to deal with their workforce housing problem. And I just literally got the article to you. I haven't read through it very detailed, but I want to contact them and say, okay, where were you guys? How did you solve it? How's it going? You know, I mean, and you know, so I agree with you that, you know, even in my time here, I see things keep recycling, but there's also problems that haven't been addressed.
Well, North Haven, I was on Islesboro for a couple of years, same thing. They go with the workforce. And so I understand some of that stuff. As a planning board member, we've had a lot of things come in front of us. Right, we've come in committee, we've discussed it and so forth, and we find we're talking about it every other year.
Right.
And so I'm just.
No, and we.
Your point is well taken.
But, you know, and we're hopefully getting closer to starting the comp plan implementation thing. And that's another committee, but it's to make sure that the comp plan doesn't just sit on a shelf for 10 years, that we actually, you know.
Well, I was on the comp plan.
Yeah.
Several years ago, and
Yeah.
I've seen things, what I'm saying, it seems like it doesn't stop.
It doesn't, and I think, you know, something like a comp plan, I think that's kind of a continuing thing, right? Because you're gonna redo that every 10 years or so, of course, but I do think that. Having some committees, I think it's probably up to us as a board to keep the pressure on the committees for deliverables, for progress, for, you know, momentum and accountability. But I do, in a lot of instances, I like the idea of a committee, not to make things more bureaucratic or more weighed down with time, but it's a way to involve community members, and many of whom have specialties, especially in this town, the people that come from so many different walks of life, either having grown up here or having moved here. I think they have a lot to contribute in their professional and personal experiences that I think can enrich, make a rich experience beyond what the 3 of us could do on our own, time side and other commitments aside.
Yeah.
But I think it is up to us to keep the pressure on and to keep everything prioritized and have, you know, whether it be weekly reports or bi-weekly reports at our meetings to say, you know, have updates from the various committees that we have, not just wait for them to give us.
So Tom, just to add to your point, when I had a meeting at the Hancock County Planning Commission with Greg and Avery, they pulled out the comprehensive plan from Castine from 110 years ago, and they showed it to me, and it was like, there were some things on the comprehensive plan from 100 years ago that are still coming up.
Well, that's it, I mean, this is a small community, right? People moved into this community because it's small and tight. But what we're seeing more and more is the influx of people coming in, wanting this community to turn out where they came from.
Yeah.
Right?
You don't want that.
And that's what we don't want, and we're seeing that more and more. And that's frustration, right? And I'm talking for myself, not for everybody else in the audience. So I mean, in planning board wise, we see things where you're talking about housing and you're talking about rentals. We discussed this, we have landlords in this place that had cadets, Maine Maritime kids living in this shed, right, that we've dealt with. And over again, we just have to keep our eyes out.
Right.
But this is, I would love to keep this community small. We all come from metropolitan areas. I don't wanna go back there.
No, we all want to keep it small, absolutely, absolutely. John?
Yeah, I just wanna ask this question before Derek goes on vacation. I was assuming that $15,000 for the PFAS testing was a budget for various tests. I didn't know it was for one specific test. Could you explain to me briefly what that test is, or is there some written material you can give me?
The test is simply to explore the well number 4, I think it is, on the Battle Ave lot. And then see if they can't figure out from there, after they were gonna retest anyways, to see if there was contaminated sample because of the tester. Or if it was for some other reason that they had the mud or something with a well digging machine. And from there, once they get a positive test again, then they would investigate other means to figure out if they can figure out what the source of that PFAS is there.
Okay, so for to be
So,
decided.
given the fact that's uphill, it could be, right, they could be going to other places to investigate further from that. And maybe that they can find old records from the old insurance maps that shows there's an old something up there, like I had to do something similar for like a rail trail to look at and they look at old insurance maps, stuff like that, or what was there for old factories maybe 100 years ago. And then so that's basically what they do, is they try to chase it back to figure out what the causes are. That's a brownfield investigation, but I'd assume that this will be a similar investigation of testing, okay, you got a water contaminant, what are the possible places that came
I have a
from?
feeling they're gonna be making their way towards the golf course, but we'll see.
Yeah,
Let's see. Okay, anybody else?
and Josh, that's where I said they may be visiting Brook and Gill too, because that might be obvious. It might be a shortcut for them to say, look, already we have it uphill.
During this work session.
So moved.
Second, thank you, all in favor,
Aye.
thank you, thank you.
Yeah.